It is now my great pleasure to welcome all of you, distinguished guests, faculty colleagues, families, friends, and members of the graduating class to the 2016 commencement exercises of the Yale Law School. We gather today to celebrate a moment of consequence in the lives of 201 JD candidates, 23 LLM candidates, 2 MSL candidates, 3 JSD candidates, and 3 PhDs in law. When these 232 individuals finish their academic requirements, when the final staple goes through the final paper, and when the last examination is at last graded, these graduates will be, very simply, the finest law school graduates on the planet. All the music, all the marching, all the medieval badges and robes and ceremonies that surround this day are meant to mark this single decisive moment of high transition in the lives of these 232 graduates. And as with all moments of transition, it is an occasion to take stock both of the past and to assess the bright but inscrutable future that lies before you. If we gaze into the past, we can see a long and winding pathway that has led to this graduation. Members of the graduating class have had to accomplish a great deal to arrive at this moment. And it is important, I think, to stress at the outset that these accomplishments, however heroic, are not those of our graduates alone. Behind each and every one of our graduates is a story of family and friends, of parents who nourished and sacrificed, who hovered and let go, of grandparents, uncles, and aunts who supported and sustained them, of brothers and sisters and cousins and friends who stood by them and stood with them, of partners and spouses and children and other loved ones who strengthened and inspired them. The real education of our graduates was earned long before they arrived at the Yale Law School. We are latecomers in their lives, and we have had them in our care for only an instant. So as we call to mind the past that has brought our graduates to this precious time, let us remember, first and foremost, those who truly made this moment possible. Would the families and friends of the class of 2016, many of whom have traveled many miles to be here today, please rise so we can honor and welcome you. Let us also honor the faculty of this law school who sit before you on this stage. They are, by common acclamation, the finest and most influential law faculty in the world. They have worked hard to give you members of the graduating class, a mastery of the law, so that the law might feel in your hands intelligible and familiar and responsive. So let us now, as they are assembled here, thank them one more time. We might take this moment also to thank those many members of the Yale community who have worked so hard to make your time among us comfortable and secure. They have rescued your computers. They have piloted you through the maze of our remarkable library. They have maintained our gem of a building. They've mailed out your many letters of recommendation. They've responded to your room reservation requests in all caps. And they've performed a myriad of other services of which you may or may not be aware. And I wanted to give special thanks today to those administrators who have worked with you so intimately throughout your time here. To Deputy Dean Al Tvorek, who has toiled so very hard and successfully to assemble a superb curriculum that is comprehensive and challenging, diverse and responsive. To Deputy Dean Mike Wishney, who has dedicated himself to creating an innovative, imaginative, and awe-inspiring program of experiential education. To Associate Dean Ellen Cosgrove, who in her very first year with us has spent night and day tending to your many needs and helping you to navigate through a school year filled with many challenges. To Associate Dean Asha Rangappa, who has handled the requirements of your financial aid with tact and with assurance. To Librarian Blair Kaufman, who has catapulted the services of your library to new heights and who is now regrettably stepping down after 22 years as our librarian. To Assistant Dean Gordon Silverstein, whose tender care for graduate students has been unrelenting. To our devoted and patient registrar, Assistant Dean Judith Calvert, who has organized this day and who works harder than any of you can imagine to make sure that your requirements are in fact fulfilled so that you can in fact graduate. And finally, to Associate Dean Mike Thompson, whose inventiveness and attentiveness and sympathy for every concern, large and small, keeps this place running very smoothly. So I thank you all. And I wanted to say a few words before we begin our ceremony. I wanted to say, first of all, that these last few years have been remarkable years. Inside the medieval walls that define Yale Law School, you, the class of 2016, have participated in a political awakening. You have been more alert to the maladies and injustices of our society than any generation of students in recent memory. And there is, let me tell you, nothing more exhilarating than students who are committed to changing institutions for the better. Your energy and drive have helped to make this school a better place than you found it when you entered, and we are all very grateful. This graduation, however, marks the moment when you must depart from the Gothic walls of the Yale Law School and enter the larger world. And it is not a pretty picture. Our globe is burning, from acts of wanton violence in Paris and San Bernardino and Charleston and Ankara to the killing fields of Iraq and Syria, from the fierce storms of an overheated planet to the bloodlands of Ukraine, from the refugees braving high seas for the shores of Europe to the cities of West Africa emptied by Ebola, from the threats of Grexit and Brexit to the revanchist regimes of Poland and Hungary, our world grows each year more dangerous and more threatening. And these are challenges you will have to face after graduation. And of course, this will not be easy because my generation has bequeathed to you a world that is falling into fragments even as it shrinks and grows more interdependent. As you become leaders in your respective countries, I hope that what you have learned here will help you in your struggle to hold our fragile globe together. The challenge, I think, will be especially difficult in the United States. In my lifetime, I have not seen a political atmosphere more angry, more poisonous, or more baleful. There are no doubt many causes of our political distemper, and these certainly would include increasing inequality, anemic economic growth, and gaping cultural divides. But this afternoon, I want to focus on one cause which you, the graduating class of 2016, have within your control to moderate, at least with respect to your own attitudes and conduct. I am referring to the rise of extreme partisanship. American political life is now divided into camps so mutually antagonistic that ordinary political life has become all but impossible. A 2014 study by two political scientists found, and I'm quoting the study now, that hostile feelings for the opposing party are ingrained or automatic in voters' minds, and that effective polarization based on party is just as strong as polarization based on race. In a frightening conclusion, the study notes that elites now have a greater incentive to engage in confrontation than in cooperation. Just to give you some sense of how profoundly divisive our political life has become, consider that in 1960, only about 5% of Americans expressed a negative reaction to the prospect of their child marrying someone from the opposing party. By 2010, this figure had increased eightfold to 40%, and that includes Republicans and Democrats. It is plain, I think, that politics has become too personal. It has become a matter of identity. What worries me is that such extreme identitarian division is potentially fatal in a diverse nation that can be held together only by common politics. We cannot govern ourselves if we remain balkanized into narrow, tribal attitudes. And I am reminded in this context of an old story that is told to us by Thucydides, the great Athenian general and historian from the 5th century BC. Thucydides recounts the tale of the disastrous Peloponnesian War between Athens and Sparta. And at that time, all of Greece was broken into two political parties. One party advocated for an aristocratic oligarchy, and the other favored democracy. And the struggle between the two parties was violent and fanatic, and the result, Thucydides recounts, was, and I'm quoting Thucydides now, he says, society became divided into two ideologically hostile camps, and each side viewed the other with suspicion. This partisanship could not be ended, says Thucydides, because, quoting him, no guarantee could be given that would be trusted, no oath sworn that people would fear to break. Everyone had come to the conclusion that it was hopeless to expect a permanent settlement, and so instead of being able to feel confident in others, they devoted their energies to providing against being injured themselves. The upshot of this breakdown of trust among the Greeks was that atrocity followed atrocity. Men became beasts. In words that should be remembered forever, Thucydides laments the loss of what he calls the ordinary conventions of civilized life, because Greeks had begun the process of repealing those general laws of humanity which are there to give a hope of salvation to all who are in distress, instead of remembering that there may come a time when they too will be in danger and will need their protection. We are not, I hope, in danger of atrocities, but we are certainly within sight of losing trust in those general laws of governance that require us to work together despite our disagreements, however passionate those disagreements may become. The loss of trust in our society is corrosive, and every day it becomes more and more widespread. Nearly 50 years ago, almost half of Americans believed that most people could be trusted. But today, that number has fallen to less than 1 in 3. In the 1960s, 80% of Americans trusted their government. But today, that number hovers around 20%. Only about a third of Americans trust our criminal justice system or our Supreme Court. When asked, Americans report a lower opinion of Congress than of root canals, colonoscopies, Brussels sprouts, or traffic jams. Congress does manage a higher approval rating than telemarketers, North Korea, or the Ebola virus. Now, that would be humorous were it not tragic. Consider, we live in a representative democracy. Our government represents us. The House of Representatives is the people's house. If we detest our own government, what does that say about us? Do we loathe ourselves, or do we despise our neighbors? And if we disavow all institutions of governance, we shall have accomplished nothing but the certainty of our own vulnerability. We shall be vulnerable because without institutions of governance, we can't act together. We can't build a common future or ensure our common security. Institutions of governance and the laws through which they act are necessary if we are to enjoy the immense goods of social cooperation. Excessive partisanship undercuts the social trust required for the political processes that underwrite both governance and law. Whatever kind of society you want to build, whether it's liberal or conservative, it must be accomplished through political processes that depend upon trust. Thucydides described the hell produced by the absence of trust. He said, and I'm quoting him, "Human nature, always ready to offend even where laws exist, shows itself proudly in its true colors as something incapable of controlling passion, insubordinate to the idea of justice, and as the enemy to anything superior to itself." Without trust, there can be no law, no justice, no security. There is only self-preservation. There is only a dreadful war of all against all. And the question is not whether we should trust the particular decisions of government, which can be right or they can be wrong. The question is rather whether we have any option but to trust the political processes by which we engage each to the other to determine how we shall act together and how we shall make our laws. And I know that these very political processes can often be, and often are, perversely slow and slanted and unresponsive, and they can even be, and often are, corrupt. But these political processes are all that we have, and therefore we must, paradoxically, use them to make these very processes better and fairer. And politics in a democracy has to be open to everyone, to all. You cannot enter politics without encountering those who disagree with you, and perhaps who disagree radically. And it is therefore essential that we find a way to structure such encounters in a manner that does not involve excessive partisanship. Thucydides gave us a clue about how this delicate balance might be maintained, and he put his thoughts into the mouth of Pericles, the great Athenian leader. In his famous funeral oration for the Athenian war dead, Thucydides has Pericles praise Athens as a democracy because power is in the hands not of a minority, but of the whole people. And in Athens, says Pericles, we are free and tolerant in our private lives, but in public affairs we keep to the law. This is because it commands our deep respect. Athenians respected law because they were all involved in fashioning it. So Pericles says this, he says, "Here, each individual is interested not only in his own affairs, but in the affairs of the state as well. Even those who are mostly occupied with their own business are extremely well informed on general politics. This is a peculiarity of ours. We do not say that a man who takes no interest in politics is a man who minds his own business. We say that he has no business here at all." Now, politics in 5th century Athens was a deadly serious business, far more so than in the United States today. Failed politicians could be exiled or ostracized or worse. But Pericles nevertheless summoned Athenians to full participation in the political processing, arguing that happiness depends upon being free and freedom depends upon being courageous. So, being free means being self-governing. It means that we have the capacity to fashion our own future according to our own ideals. It is a miraculous and it's a wonderful thing to enter democratic politics in order to realize our convictions. But to the extent that we loathe our political adversaries and seek to exclude them from the common political space that the Greeks called the agora, we abandon the possibility of a shared future. It is not possible to sustain a democracy that includes the whole people if we refuse to deal with our adversaries. Democracy fails if we seek advantage only for ourselves or only for our tribe or for our party. Of course, it is possible that our adversaries may be so awful that we come to believe we cannot share a future with them. This is what happened during the American Civil War. But such times must necessarily be very rare insofar as we treasure the ongoing practice of democracy. And that is why Pericles emphasizes that democracy requires courage. Democracy requires the courage to persist in pursuing our ideals, while at the same time to resist the temptation to excessive partisanship that excludes adversaries from the agora, from the purview of democratic politics. And that is a very rare kind of courage. It requires patience and endurance, but it must be maintained even as democratic politics fails repeatedly and even as it falls under the control of those who oppose our ideals. The poet in the 20th century who most tellingly articulated what it might mean to lose faith in a common political future was the Nobel laureate Czesław Miłosz. Miłosz, whose papers are in the Beinecke Library, was a Lithuanian who wrote in Polish, and he tried to understand the havoc caused by World War II. He believed that Eastern Europeans had lost trust in one another, and hence that they had abandoned the possibility of political engagement. In his monumental poem, Child of Europe, Miłosz describes the cynical world created by the war in Eastern Europe. This is what he writes. We, from the fiery furnaces, from behind barbed wires on which the winds of endless autumns howled, we who remember battles where the wounded air roared in paroxysm of pain, we saved by our own cunning and knowledge, having the choice of our own death and that of a friend, we chose his, coldly thinking, let it be done quickly. We sealed gas chamber doors, stole bread, knowing that the next day would be harder to bear than the day before. Love no country, countries soon disappear. Love no city, cities are soon rubble. Do not love people, people soon perish, or they are wronged and call for your help. So in these lines, Miłosz evokes what it is like to inhabit the bleak and the cruel world long ago described by Thucydides. It is a world in which persons are out for themselves alone. It is a world in which cunning and calculation reign. It is a world without trust and therefore without a hope for the future. No politics are possible in such a world because no bargains can be struck, and no one would freely choose to live in such a world. As he grew older, Miłosz began slowly to heal from the mighty blows of the war, and in his poem, What I Learned from Jean Hirsch, he enumerated some of the lessons that he had painfully gleaned from his formidable historical experience. The poem consists of 12 numbered propositions, but I'll read you only 3. The first says, that they have been wrong who undermined our confidence in reason by enumerating the forces that want to usurp it: class struggle, libido, will to power. And the second is, the proper attitude toward being is respect. And the third is, that in our lives we should not succumb to despair for the past is never closed down and receives the meaning we give it by our subsequent acts. These, I think, are profound insights to contemplate as you begin your lives outside of the Sterling Law Building. So first, have confidence in your reason. You have received the best legal education available anywhere in the world. Use that education to light your way and to guide others. Do not believe in the crude ideologies that reduce everything to the sham play of false consciousness. In this world, there are rights and there are wrongs, and know that it matters whether you correctly perceive the difference. Second, as you use your reason to fashion the ideals that you will pursue, respect being, which means respect the facticity of the world. The world is as it is, regardless of what you might wish it to be. Have humility before the facts of the world. Miłosz lived in Eastern Europe, which suffered unspeakable horrors because in the ideology of both the Nazis and the Soviet Union, facts counted for nothing. The world could be reshaped at will. And in a poem called Faith, Miłosz rejects this perspective. This is how the first stanza of the poem goes. The word faith means when someone sees a dewdrop or a floating leaf and knows that they are because they have to be. And even if you dreamed or closed your eyes and wished, the world would still be what it was, and the leaf would still be carried down the river. Respect for being requires faith that there is a world outside of you and that it matters. It cannot be remade according to your desires. And this is a particularly important insight when it comes to other people. Other people are also facts in the world, and they must be respected, just as all other facts are respected. And one expression of this respect is to engage other people through politics, as distinct from excluding them from the agora in the hope that they will simply vanish. Other people will not disappear, even if you close your eyes and wish them away. And this is true even when other people have opinions that you regard as obnoxious or wrong-headed or violently incorrect. Respect for being means accepting the fundamental alterity of others, which is the foundation of all politics. And without politics, none of us can be free. We are all thrown willy-nilly into a common lifeboat, and we flourish together or we do not flourish at all. And that is why political ideology counts for much, but not for everything. Excessive partisanship denies this basic truth. And I remind you, this is also why race and ethnicity and gender and sexual orientation and socioeconomic status and all such categories count for a great deal, but they do not count for everything. And if they did, our common lifeboat would break into fragments and be swamped. Third and last, do not despair of the present. I know that it may at times appear bleak, but if there is hope for the future, you are that hope. The present is never shut down. You can remake the meaning of the present by changing the future. Respect for being is not a recipe for passivity. It does not demand that justices be endured. And that is why Miłosz ends his poem, Faith, with these remarkable lines. This is the ending of the poem. Look, see the long shadow cast by the tree, and flowers and people throw shadows on the earth. What has no shadow has no strength to live. Your strength to live is a fact of your being. Respect it. Cast your shadows on the earth. Love your country. Love your city. Love one another. Engage in politics to improve your country and your city. But do know that whatever future you hope to create, we must all inhabit it together and stand firmly balanced in the tension between your ideals and your respect for the alterity of others. It is an equilibrium as fragile and as delicate and yet as inevitable as a shadow falling on a leaf floating down a river. Today, you begin your journey down that river. You can exercise the freedom of self-governance only through politics, and therefore, only through the law that issues from politics. Your teachers on this platform hope that during your time among us, we have taught you something about how to use the law to build your own vision of the future. We hope we have initiated you into the practices of effective governance and illuminated for you the inner workings of institutions, the mysteries of incentives, and the palimpsest of social values. We hope we have also given you an understanding of the rule of law, which is one of civilization's greatest achievements. We hope that you will remember that when the law is severed from competence, it cannot long survive, but that when the law is indifferent to justice, it becomes an abomination. We hope that we have taught you that the law is not merely a means of social coordination, but something indispensable for human flourishing. When you leave here, you will become leaders in your chosen fields, and you will no doubt face insoluble problems. But all your teachers and your friends on this stage hope that you may encounter the unimaginable adventures that lie before you with the same verve and intelligence, with the same unfailing self-respect, with the same moral courage, and with the same pleasure and delight that you have displayed during your time here among us. You are the fortunate beneficiaries of an education that many have sought, but that only a few have received. And you therefore carry the responsibility of using that education well. And that responsibility begins now, as you graduate. As you leave this place, know that you carry with you our faith that you will construct a new future for all of us. And we wish you every success. So on behalf of this faculty and this community and the proud profession of which you will soon be a part, congratulations. We presently have 4 graduate degree programs at Yale Law School. The students in these programs have already been trained as professionals, and they have come to us seeking to engage in the advanced study of law. This year, 3 students will receive the high degree of Doctor of the Science of Law, the JSD. These are students who have previously received an LLM degree at Yale Law School and who have maintained their course of study in order to compose a rigorous dissertation which constitutes a substantial contribution to legal scholarship. This year, 23 students will receive the degree of Master of Laws, the LLM. Each of these students has studied here during the past year, taking courses and working closely with faculty members in order to meet the strenuous requirements of this advanced degree. And this year, we have 2 students who will receive a Master of Studies in Law, the MSL degree. These students are professionals who are not lawyers and who during the past year have explored the relationship between law and another discipline. And finally, in the class of 2016, we have 3 pioneers earning the degree of PhD in law. Today, these students make history. When they are hooded, they shall become the first PhDs in law ever created by any law school in the United States. They have taken coursework, passed written and oral examinations, and composed dissertations. To present the candidates for these advanced degrees in law, I call upon their advocate, friend, and mentor, Assistant Dean Gordon Silverstein.
Dean Post, members of the faculty, distinguished guests, friends, and family, it's my high privilege and distinct honor to present to you the candidates for the degrees of Doctor of the Science of Law, Master of Laws, Master of Studies in Law, and followed by those awarded the degree of Doctor of Philosophy in Law. For the degree of Doctor of the Science of Law, Marcus W. Gehring. Leora Dahan Katz, joined by Tamara, Talia, Liat, and Eliana Katz. Patricia I. McMahon, joined by Jack and Max McCann Ackhurst. We also have Gunnar Norden and Yilu Zhu, who are not here with us today. For the degree of Master of Laws, Gilad Abiri, joined by Jonathan Abiri. Johannes Stefan Buchheim. Chintan Chandrachud. Ignacio Nicolas Cafone. Gabriela Espinosa, joined by Joaquin Prieto. Sergio Giuliano. Eugenio Gomez Chico Barbara. Shushui Hua. Ying Hu. Ashkan Kazarian. Jani Huchi Leung. Johanna Aliera Lorenzo. Yi Lu. Ashish Mitter. Nama Omri, joined by Emily Tamara Hassin. Seda Palanduz. Yael Pleitman. Juliana Ponde Fonseca. Ingemar Saming. Stefan Frederick Tunissen. Raisa Vakil. Anna Beatriz Vansoff Hobelino. Benedict Emmanuel Fisher. For the degree of Master of Studies in Law, Roseanne Coletti Harris. And Kang Lee, who's not with us today. And now, for the first time, for the degree of Doctor of Philosophy in Law, Maureen Elise Brady. Rebecca Lauren Krutoff. And Rory Van Loo. Congratulations to you all.
In the class of 2016, 201 students will receive the degree of Juris Doctor, the JD degree. To earn this degree, students have had to complete 3 years of difficult coursework, as well as to undertake substantial and sustained analytic writing under faculty supervision. To present the candidates for this degree, I now call upon our Associate Dean of Student Affairs, Ellen Cosgrove, who has served our students with compassion and with wisdom.
Dean Post, members of the faculty, distinguished guests, friends, and family, it's my distinct honor and high privilege to present to you the candidates for the degree of Juris Doctor. Corey Kenneth Atkins. Jessica Catherine Agatstein. Abdurrashid Aidid. Molly Jean Alarcon. Hillary Eva Albrecht. Yutian An. Ashley Hubbard Anderson. Alula Asfo. Ahmad Hanzala Atik. Robert John Baker. Benjamin Zoltan Bergman. Reginald Dwayne Betts. Accompanied by his children, Micah and Miles. Robert Matthew Black. Zachary Spiegel Blau. John August Beglin. Noah Benjamin Bocat Lindell. Jesse Aaron Beretsky. Hal Robert Boyd, accompanied by his children, Theodore and Ford. That's great. Alan Standish Bradley. Megan Christine Braun. Charles Cowperthwaite Bridge. Alexandra Zoe Brodsky. Marvin Christopher Brown IV. Walker Philip Lucindas Brumskeen II. Moen Shah. Zachary Chalet. Vishal Chanani. Aurelia Chowdhury. Jeffrey Weiho Chin. Michelle Minju Young Cho. Jade Alexandria Chong Smith. David Handelsman Christie. Michael Andrew Clementi. Marcella Elizabeth Coburn. Akuna Ezinwa Cook, accompanied by her children, Jackson and Jillian. Lucas Wayne Eugene Crosslow. Nicholas Stephen Crown. Conchita Cruz. Brian Michael Zarnecki. Jacqueline Delegati. Catherine Elizabeth Demby. Elizabeth Burnett Deutsch. Joshua Michael Devine, accompanied by his children, Arabella, Sadie, and Caroline. Lara Dominguez. Graham Patrick Downey. Jonathan Eric Endine. William Dylan Fay. Martha Elizabeth Ferson. Barrett Grace Fitzsimmons. Rebecca Wall Forrestal, accompanied by her daughter Fiona. Jesslyn Friley. Bernard Charles Funk. Lucas Robert George. Nicholas Johann Tor Gershman. Sharif Gergis. Margaret Vivian Goodlander. Carter Eldon Greenbaum. Noah Shalom Greenfield, accompanied by his children, Judah and Gabriel. Corey William Gilmette. Alun Guy Gore. Emmanuel Charles Hampton. Jacqueline Ann Harris. Grace Elizabeth Hart. Daniel Jacob Hessel. Grace Husner. Clark Lassiter Hildebrand. Tyler Wellington Hill. Michael Hogan. Tamar Holoshitz. Alexander Justin Holtzman. Catherine Lynn Huddleston. Jonathan Tristan Hurley with his child, Elliot. Elizabeth Ann Ingraselli. Johnny Zachary Isaacson. Sandeep Iyer. Keith Michael Jameson. Paul Jeffrey. Jaeyoung John. Janita John. Catherine Elizabeth Jones. Nipun Gupta Kant. Tanya Kapoor. Andrea Scoseria Katz. Andrew McLean Cow. Alexander Kazam. Leora Metzenbaum-Kelman. Beasley James Kiernan. Yunsig Kim. Dimitri Klebanner. Robert Conrad Clipper with his child Molly. Monica Nikita Katari. Stephanie Clara Krent. Christina Rosa Crucian. Jonathan Alexander Langlanay. Monte Joseph Langston. David Bomer LeBeau. Christopher Xiang J. Lee. Rebecca Mulvina Lee. Carly Levinson. Stephen Andrew Levy. Karen Ruo Lee. Jeremy Michael Liss. Catherine Loomis. Carmen Xiao Wei Lu. Amanda Lynch. Andrew Ambrose Lyonsberg. Luke Maher. Nicholas James Maida. Adam Zeldis Margulies. Joseph O'Meara Masterman. Sarah Serafina Midzik. Dalia Minunya. Daniel Lee Miller. Jacob Miller. Alexa Tykert Milton. Javi Aaron Levinson Morel. Nicholas Molina Jr. Christine Holly Monahan. Ruth Ann Montiel. Tasneem Motala. Divya Masini-Pali. Thomas Maxwell Nardini. Aaron Edgar Nathan. Vivan Nehru. Mitchell David Noble. Daniela de Lima Noguera. Joshua James Nuni. Erica Britt Nyborg Birch. Jane Beth Ostriger. Christopher Carmen Pagliarella. Albert Young Pack. Michaela Pandatharatna. Lourdes Pantin. John Rafael Peña Perez. Ben Vincent Picozzi. Rosa Poe. Dwight Bernard Nippert Pope. Javon Potts. Lauren Aiken Pratt. Patricia Stephanie Rutkowski. Daniel Eric Rausch. Ajay Krishnan Ravichandran. Swapna Reddy. Mara Redlick Revkin. Abigail Hannah Rich. Brian Allen Richmond. Michael Joseph Rocafort. Marina Bowen Romani. Emily Ann Rosenberg. Emily Rush. Adam Saltzman. Avinash Nitin Samarth. Michael Paris Shapiro. Zachary Shapiro. Jeffrey Cameron Shaw. Daniel Cullen Sheehan. Jane Shim. Michael Joseph Showalter. Liang Julia Xu. Zain Siddiq. Bradley Jeff Silverman. David Michael Simmons. Claire Simonich. Julia Margaret Solorzano. Carl William Spilly.
We're losing hats here right now.
Seguin Leighton Strohmeyer. William Peyton Sullivan. Benjamin Brink Sweeney. Julius Taranto. Dorothy Goldstein Tegler. Devora Chana Torin. Jessica Sang. Peter John Tucci. Peter Zhang. Sarahi Marilyn Uribe. Daniel Reinhold Sasha Vihof, accompanied by his children Hannah and Elena. Jonathan David Vogler. Kimberly Faith Walkler. Benjamin Lees Wallace. Alice Wang. Jonas King Wang. Amanda Caitlin Weingarten. Rebecca Wexler. Graham Wheeler White. Benjamin Michael Woodring. Megan Suzanne Wright. Catherine Lily Winbrand. Victor Hauhan Yu. Jennifer Jason Yun. Wen Grace Zhang. Danyang Chao. Jimmy Jia Zhuang. And Michael Benjamin Zucker. And now I'm pleased to present our graduates who are receiving the Juris Doctor today, along with their Masters in Business Administration. Oluwatosin Ababiaka. Anna Baramovich. You might see some of the graduates running alongside here. They're literally coming from the School of Management graduation. So I'm going to speak slowly so they have a minute to get in line. Oh. Rakeem Hassan Daquan Brooks. Kristen Bushnell Berry. Marissa Susan Choi. Sarah Edwards Esty. Sarah Ann Golbeck Goldman. Ji Min. Samuel Frank Page. Philip Douglas Poole. Scott Jared Rogue. Tomas Tolford Rua. And Jahi Asher Wise. Congratulations to you all.
There's two more. Alan, two more.
We need names. Do you know them? I need names. Marissa Susan Choi. And Ji Min. Okay, looks like we have a few more. Andrea Scosaria Katz. And David Lebo. And we think that's it.
So each year, the graduating class elects a member of the faculty to speak at their commencement. And the class of 2016 has selected one of Yale's most intense and brilliant lights, Stephen B. Bright, the Harvey Karp Visiting Lecturer in Law. Steve is a devoted lawyer, a tenacious advocate for justice, and a superb teacher. For decades, he has led the Southern Center for Human Rights, an organization dedicated to those whom our system of law has condemned to death. Steve has been a member of our faculty since 1993, teaching the subject of capital punishment and supervising individual students in the representation of condemned prisoners. And to put it very simply, Steve is a force of nature. He labors with terrible intensity to defend those who lack the resources to defend themselves. Steve has cajoled in the past, Steve has cajoled the Supreme Court to make sure defendants are heard by a jury of their true peers. He has pushed state legislators to create adequately staffed offices of public defenders. He has breathed life into the promise of Gideon versus Rainwright, working every day to ensure that indigent defendants will be represented by capable lawyers. And just this morning, in the case of Foster versus Chapman, he won a decision in the United States Supreme Court and that decision set aside the conviction of a defendant who had been found guilty by a jury from whom African American jurors had been struck with deliberate discriminatory purpose. Steve is beloved because he believes that the law can be used for great good, as you saw this morning. Of his seminar on capital punishment, one student has said, and I'm quoting now, "If this were a required course, we'd probably live in a more sane and just world." These feelings run so deeply that today will be Steve's second commencement speech at Yale in the last 5 years. And one cannot ask for a more eloquent affirmation of Steve's place within this institution. Year in and year out, Steve's students remember him with awe and appreciation, and the class of 2016 is no exception. Despite his tremendous passion and his outsized accomplishment, Steve knows that his mission is too large to be completed in a single lifetime, and he accordingly treats his students with the respect due to potential successors. He learns his students' names immediately, he pores over their papers with a red pen, and he looks each of them in the eye and shakes their hand before class, and the results are astounding. Students describe him and his courses using phrases like, "It was the best course I took at the law school," "I don't mind using superlatives with Stephen Bright," and "He is the most human professor, warm, caring, funny, and engaged." It is no surprise, therefore, that Steve has inspired countless students to go on to pursue his noble work, the kind of work that Steve has been doing every day since he was handed a diploma of law on a stage like this one and understood the power that he grasped in his hands. So it's my pleasure to introduce this year's commencement speaker, Professor Stephen Bright.
Thank you very much, Dean Post, and I'm most grateful to Robert Post for so many things during his deanship, but I appreciate his eloquent comments and his effort to make it appear that I really belong here. As most of you know, when Guido Calabrese invited me to come here, it was sort of like opening the gate and letting a mule onto the track at the Kentucky Derby. Ever since then, like the mule, I've never really known if I belonged there or not, but I've benefited immensely from the associations with you and with this great faculty. And it's a great honor, and I want to express my deepest and most heartfelt thanks to you, first of all, for the honor of being able to make a few remarks. as we celebrate all that you've accomplished here and as you look to the future in the law. It's been an honor for me, more than I can say, to teach so many of you during the last 3 years, to get to know so many of you outside of my class, like John Raphael. You don't forget, people you meet here. And to work closely with so many of you on matters of life and death, both here at the law school and at my program in Atlanta. 5 people graduating today: Michelle, Jessica, Ajay, Robert, Tyler. Thanks to them and thanks to their work, both in Atlanta and here, there's one less person facing execution in Georgia today. And there's a 7-1 opinion by Justice Roberts saying that this kind of racial discrimination and striking people from juries will not be tolerated. I have enormous respect and affection for you. And I'm overwhelmed that you would give me this opportunity. Thank you. Second, I want to congratulate you, your families, your partners, your teachers, your friends, everybody who has supported you throughout your life and at different times in your life and have brought you to this place where you are today. I hope you have a wonderful celebratory day that is joyful in all regards and that it launches you into a meaningful and rewarding life in the law. Dean Post has talked about some of the great global issues that face us. You have been awarded your degrees at a time, as he mentioned, of great polarization in our politics, unconscionable inequity in the wealth of people in our society, an enormous and growing gap in the access to justice for poor people in all kinds of cases, and a continuing failure to end racism in our society and racial discrimination in our courts. And responding to these problems is the collective responsibility of all of us in this society. As members of a society committed to the rule of law and the principles of the Constitution, including equal protection for all. It's particularly the responsibility of lawyers, because lawyers have a monopoly on the provision of legal services, and with that monopoly comes the responsibility to see that the legal system works for everyone. The lives of many people depend upon it. The lives of many people depend. Whether they're being treated fairly, whether they're safe, whether they will have hope and opportunity, whether broken people will be made whole again. And the credibility and the legitimacy of our legal system depends upon it, working for everyone. But as we know, lawyers and the legal system are increasingly beyond the reach of some of those hurting the most and some of those with the most compelling needs. Those facing evictions from their home, those who are the victims of domestic violence, the parent who's about to lose a child in court and has no lawyer to accompany them to court, veterans suffering from trauma and all sorts of other things and encountering all kinds of legal problems, those with mental disorders and intellectual disabilities who've been abandoned to the streets and to the jails and the prisons. Lawyers are beyond the reach of most of those facing deportation, even children unaccompanied by any adult, to a place where they might face danger and even the loss of life. You know what a difference a lawyer makes in these situations because so many of you have made a difference in these and other areas. I think it's so exciting today that 4 women, including 3 graduating today, the children and grandchildren of immigrants and refugees, have started the Asylum Seeker Advocacy Project. They have already helped stop the deportation of hundreds of Central American refugees. Many of you have been involved as volunteers, and they will continue to represent individuals seeking to be freed from detention centers and to win asylum to stay in the United States. And others in this class who will have the financial resources to do so, and I know some of you will generously support that program so that it can carry out its work. Are you with me? Are we all in? Are we all in? There are innocent people in prison who need legal assistance. We learned that from a remarkable evening we had at the start of the term when we heard from Anthony Ray Hinton, a man who spent 30 years on Alabama's death row for a crime he didn't commit. He's one of 156 people sentenced to death who were later found to be innocent. One of almost 2,000 people convicted of all kinds of crimes and who got all kinds of sentences who were later exonerated. One of our graduates, a past graduate of this law school, one of my students, my research assistant, my co-teacher, in the Capital Punishment Project, Capital Punishment Clinic, CSNA, was one of the lawyers who brought about Anthony Ray Hinton's release. Sia has also won the release of people all over this country sentenced to life imprisonment without any possibility of parole as children, some as young as 13. But once the Supreme Court held that they were entitled to an individualized determination of their sentence, Sia has gone literally all over this country representing them. Some were even in their 60s when they were released. One of her clients was Josh Carter, 66 when he finally was released. He had been at the notorious plantation prison in Louisiana, Angola, for 49 years. But he made the most of it. He learned what you could learn down there. He learned the trades. He did what you could do. Even when he became blind because of untreated cataracts, he worked in the prison laundry. But thanks to Sia, he's home with his family today. And Sia was one of a number of people who came to my class and told about extraordinary things they had done and people they had helped. And after they finished, I said, and she once sat where you're sitting now. And I know many will follow with their examples. But lawyers and access to the courts still beyond the reach of many other children sentenced to life without parole, many adults serving what everybody agrees are excessive sentences. The president is pardoning some of those people, but many of them need lawyers in order to apply for pardons so they can be considered. African American children are being expelled from school at rates that are many times their representation in the student population, but they have no lawyers to challenge their expulsions. Frequently, they're also prosecuted in juvenile court and sent to juvenile prisons, greatly diminishing, probably eliminating for so many of them the best hope they have for a good future, an education. We're abandoning many of our children to fend for themselves in a complex and hostile legal system that sends them to prisons where they're subject to degradation and abuse. Many are prosecuted in the adult courts on the theory advanced in the 1990s that they were super predators or beyond redemption. But you know, most of us know, that they're not super predators and that they're not beyond redemption. Most of us know a young man who at age 16 was arrested for carjacking, convicted, was held for 8 years in prisons in Virginia, including Virginia's infamous Red Onion State Prison, a supermax prison that prison officials said was built for the worst of the worst, for inmates who supposedly were so dangerous that it was better to forget about rehabilitation and simply warehouse them. That was Dwayne Betts. Dwayne wrote about his experiences in the Yale Law Journal. He said, and I quote, "They tossed me in a cell with a door so thick that no sound escaped. I was 16 years old. Each morning they took the mattress from me so that I could not sleep during the day." How do I explain this? "Each day I lost a little bit of what made me want to be free. These were the longest days of my sentence. One afternoon, in a fit of panic, I slammed my fist against the wall. I thought about suicide, and I almost disappeared." And yet Dwayne Betts survived the ritual degradation of prison. He started a book club for African-American youth called The Young Men Read. He wrote books and poetry, as you know. He graduated from the University of Maryland. He got married. He's bringing up two beautiful children, two sons, who just walked across this stage, and now he just walked across this stage, a graduate of Yale Law School. His experience reminds us that even those who have broken the law need representation that treats them as individuals, that examines who they are, precisely what they did, and assesses what they can become. That recognizes that they are much more than the worst thing they ever did in their life, and that they are not defined exclusively by one terrible mistake. Not everyone has Dwayne's extraordinary gifts of intellect and resilience. As he described in his article, many did not survive the brutal experience of prison. And that's all the more reason to follow his example in working with children, because we must never give up on our children. The child that some lawyer represents today and keeps from being expelled from school, keeps from being sent to some juvenile prison, that child may someday graduate and make immense contributions to her community. All of us as members of society and as part of the legal profession must also confront, as I said earlier, the continuing influence of race in the legal system and the exclusion of people of color from the decision-making process within it. The courts are the institutions in our society least affected by the civil rights movement. There is, as there should be, great attention to law enforcement practices that have resulted in many black men, unarmed, killed by white police officers. It's a very long list that includes 17-year-old Laquan McDonald shot 16 times by a Chicago police officer just 6 seconds after he got to the scene. 12-year-old Tamir Rice, who was shot to death within 2 seconds of the lawyers getting to the playground where he was playing. Eric Garner killed in a chokehold for selling loose cigarettes. And a long and sad and tragic list that goes on from there. But there must also, and we need to be discussing those practices, the policies, the cameras. We know so much today, and we wouldn't know what we know in those cases, just as we wouldn't know so many people are innocent were it not for DNA evidence. We would not know what happened in many of those cases were it not for cell phones and for other surveillance equipment. 14 police officers wrote reports about Laquan McDonald, and not a single one told the truth. Not a single one. But we've got to worry too about what happens after people get arrested, after they get in the court system. Because now there's a whole bunch of discretionary decisions that are going to be made. Whether it be released on bail, that can ruin your life if you're not released on bail. What charges will be brought? Whether a competent lawyer will be appointed. Small chance of that. What plea bargain will be offered? Whether people of one race will be excluded from participating, or one gender in striking the jury. What sentence will be imposed? These decisions, each of these decisions, and not a lot of others, are all influenced by race. They're influenced by race, it's undeniable. And in many courts, white people make these decisions in a system that is dealing primarily, and in some cases just about exclusively, with people of color. 95% of the nation's 2,400 elected state and local prosecutors are white. 79% of them are men. I can tell you from personal experience, quite a few of that, a substantial number of those are pretty mean white men. Not all of them. And about 86% of state trial judges and appellate judges are white. People of color, just as in the case decided by the court today, an example of people of color routinely excluded from juries because of their race. In the case of Tim Foster, an African-American youth that so many of you worked on, the prosecutor struck all 4 African-Americans and then urged the all-white jury to send Tim Foster to death row to deter people in the projects. Tim Foster and his family lived in the projects. 90% of the people who lived in the projects were African American. There's no secret about what that call was about. It's a matter of the greatest urgency that I hope you all will take on in your careers to make the courts look like the people that come before them. Regardless of what you do. And the reason for this, of course, has been the distance. You know, that most those lawyers have so often been white, male, reasonably well off, living in the suburbs or wherever. And those most desperately in need of legal services are predominantly racial minorities, poor people, working class people. And those who have the legal skills aren't near them, don't know them, don't identify with them, and don't prioritize helping them. But we have to do that. I urge you, regardless of what you do, to be engaged with these people that I've described and with these issues. I encourage you to spend time in proximity to the injustices and the suffering. From time to time, no matter what you do, get in the trenches. And I want to particularly urge you, represent clients. Represent these people that I've described, no matter how great a departure that may be from what you do the rest of the time. No matter how prosperous or powerful you become, spend some time in the jails, in the homeless shelters, in the housing projects, and other places where you find the weak and the injured. Spend some time in the courtrooms, from the lowest municipal and administrative courts on up. The courts that people have the most contact with are the municipal courts, which, as the Justice Department found out with regard to Ferguson, are not about law enforcement, not about upholding the law. It's about revenue collection. And these are cash cows that process people like fast food restaurants with scant attention to them as individuals. And they're filling up our debtors' prisons as they do so. The great privilege of being a lawyer is that you can offer a helping hand and lift up people in ways large and small. You can provide a voice for those whose lives hang in the balance, but speak in voices too faint to be heard. Last Friday, my colleagues at the Southern Center secured the release of Kiana Adams, who has a high-risk pregnancy, is 8 months pregnant, and due to give birth at any moment. She'd been sleeping on the floor of the Muskogee County Jail in Columbus, Georgia. A judge sent her there because she couldn't pay some fines on some traffic tickets after she lost her job at Walmart. In that case, 2 lives hung in the balance. And we were able to secure her release within a day of knowing about her situation. That's what you can do as a lawyer. Of course, you won't be successful in every case, with every client, but you can always encourage and lift up people. You know, listening and counseling always helps people in distress. We know that. We've all been in distress. But listening and counseling by a lawyer really helps people with legal problems, even if it turns out that's all you can do. And you can bear witness to injustices and hope that it will eventually bring them to an end. 2 weeks ago, the world lost a great visionary lawyer, Michael Ratner, who spent much of his time with the Center for Constitutional Rights. In his remarkable life in the law, he held the U.S. government accountable when it went to war illegally, when it tortured people, when it withheld information, when it limited the rights of a free press, and in countless other contexts. It was observed that his special gift was the ability to turn an urgent problem into a meaningful, hard-hitting lawsuit. He took on the prison at Guantanamo twice. In one case, he and Harold Coe and the Human Rights Clinic here represented Haitian refugees that were being held there. When people were sent to Guantanamo after 9/11, he knew it was an attempt to place them beyond the law, beyond the courts, beyond the media and the lawyers. And he challenged those detentions, and he prevailed in both cases. And after the second, he was asked what he thought his chances were when he filed the suit. And his answer was none whatsoever. This suit was filed 100% on principle. Remember that, 100% on principle. The lesson there, take risks. Get over your risk aversion. I encourage you to use your knowledge and the privilege you have to take risks for whom those playing it safe was never an option. Your greatest accomplishment may be the result of the greatest risk you take. Harold Coe recalled being aghast in the first Guantanamo case when the United States government filed a Rule 11 motion against them. And Michael Ratner reassured him. He said that the other side always files a Rule 11 motion in my case. That's no problem. It's a badge of pride. Don't worry about it. The lesson there, do not be deterred by the threats of the powerful. Seema Ahmad, who worked at Guantanamo with the clients and their families, said she learned from Michael Ratner that one of the most spiritual, fulfilling experiences is to stand with someone who has no one and to see them as a human being and to learn their story. It's about the clients. At the end of the day, it's about the clients. The people confined to Guantanamo, the people facing deportation, the people on death rows like Anthony Ray Hinton, the woman with a problem pregnancy on the floor of a jail somewhere, and countless others for whom equal justice is just a promise to the ear to be broken to the hope, a teasing illusion like a generous bequest in a pauper's will. We've got to make law a reality for those folks. Let me end with this, and those of you in the class already have heard this, but less than 50 years after the end of the Civil War, 2 extraordinary black men, Noah Pardon and Styles Hutchins, had established a law practice in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Right there at the border, Tennessee, Georgia, segregated. They were called upon in 1906 by the father of a black man, Ed Johnson, who had been convicted for the rape of a white woman and sentenced to death. Ed Johnson was almost certainly innocent in that case. His father asked Noah Pardon, who was the first lawyer he saw in the office, he asked him if they would take the case and try to save his son's life. This is heavy duty. And Noah Parton conferred with Hutchins, Stiles Hutchins, his partner, who said, "Of those to whom much is given, much is expected." They took the case. And almost immediately their homes and their law offices were attacked. Noah Parton took a train to Washington, D.C. and presented the petition for a stay of execution to the first Justice Harlan, who granted it and stayed the execution. And that night, Ed Johnson was lynched. A mob broke into the jail and took him to the bridge in the middle of town there in Chattanooga that goes over the Tennessee River. They put a noose around his neck, but before they hoisted him up, Ed Johnson said, "God bless you all, I am innocent." And he was hoisted up, and his body was riddled with bullets. Days later, the home of a black minister who had preached a sermon against lynching was burned down. The offices and homes of Parton and Hutchins continued to be attacked. And within 2 weeks, Noah Parton and Stiles Hutchins left Chattanooga and never came back. And what struck me and strikes me to this day is that when they were deciding whether to take that case, they had to know that if they accepted the case, nothing would ever be the same again. Everything they had worked for, the lives that they had spent building what they had, a law practice by 2 African-American men in the Deep South at that time, it would all be up for grabs. They might even be lynched themselves. But it wasn't a tough call for Stiles Hutchins. Of those to whom much is given, much is expected. Stiles Hutchins recognized the privilege of practicing law, and he understood that the rights of Ed Johnson meant nothing without a lawyer. We are not asked today to make decisions that hard, but we are equally aware of needs so compelling. So no matter what you do, spend some time, as I said, at the homeless shelters. Stay in touch with the legal services offices, the public defenders, the public interest projects to see what the needs are. And remember Stiles Hutchins. Of those to whom much is given, much is expected. Good luck and Godspeed.
Traditionally, the graduation of the Yale Law School concludes with a speaker upon whom Yale University has chosen to confer an honorary doctorate of laws. And this year, we are very, very lucky to hear a few words from one of the world's leading jurists, Justice Rosalie Abella of the Supreme Court of Canada. Since being appointed to the Canadian Supreme Court in 2004, Justice Abella has been an international inspiration. She has been celebrated everywhere around the globe because she joins a razor-sharp intellect to an unyielding support for human rights. And I personally can report that in person, she is as exuberant and generous and gracious as it is possible for a human being to be. Justice Abella has never been shy about her convictions. She has told audiences the world over that we need the rule of justice, not the rule of law. And she cares so intently about justice because she knows what a world without justice looks like. Her parents were married in Poland on September 3rd, 1939, 2 days after Hitler's soldiers marched across their country's border and began World War II. And 7 years later, Justice Abella was born in a camp for displaced persons in Stuttgart, Germany, after both of her parents survived the Holocaust and Nazi extermination camps. Justice Sabella's family immigrated to Halifax, Canada, where they carved out a new life. For Justice Sabella, the darkest chapters of the 20th century are not yellowing pages in some dusty book of history. She still remembers the feel of the metal badges that she wore so that Allied troops could identify her and other refugees of war. She displays her father's Polish law degree, a degree that he was unable to use in Canada due to a law prohibiting non-citizens from practicing law. And she keeps alive the memory of families she never met who were lost in the concentration camps that her parents somehow miraculously survived. And from this history, Justice Sabella draws a very stern lesson that such tragedies must never happen again. She believes that human rights must always be upheld here and now, forcefully and without equivocation, and she is, without doubt, one of the great international champions of the oppressed and the helpless. And I should add, she's also a dear friend to Yale. Every year, she returns here to participate in our Global Constitutionalism Seminar, and we are very, very happy to have her. She is our great teacher, our inspiration, and our guide. She illuminates the future of international human rights, and she is a treasure that enlivens and uplifts all around her. It is an honor to welcome Justice Sabella to the graduation ceremony of the Yale Law School.
That wasn't fair. You're going to make me cry before I even start. Have you ever seen a Supreme Court judge cry? Watch. This has been an incredible day for all of us. I think I have something in common with my fellow graduates. Is it fair to say that every single one of us kind of goes, oh my God, I can't believe I'm graduating from the Yale Law School? That's me. So Dean Post, Dean Coe, Dean Calabresi, all of my friends on the faculty, and they really are family to me. You are now the new members of my family. It is such a great honor to be here with all of you. I graduated from law school in 1970, and I have to tell you, I have every day since been so proud to be a lawyer. But I do want to echo the words you heard from the Dean and from Professor Smith. It's not just what the profession stands for. It's what it stands up for. And in these frenetically fluid, intellectually sclerotic, economically narcissistic, ideologically polarized, and rhetorically tempestuous times, a world that too often feels like it's spinning out of control, we need a legal profession that worries about what the world looks and feels like to those who are vulnerable. And that's why we need all of you. Let me explain. Last week, I spoke at the Jagiellonian University in Krakow at a conference to mark the 70th anniversary of the Nuremberg trials. It was an intensely powerful experience for me. My father went to the Jagiellonian Law School in 1930. Because there was a quota on the number of Jews, he was one of very few admitted. There were special seats assigned to the Jewish students. Rather than sit in them, he stood through most of his first year. He graduated in 1934, then spent the next 4 years completing the requirements to be admitted to the profession, working in a law firm and clerking at a court of appeal in Radom. In July 1939, the Chief Justice of the Court of Appeal approved his candidacy for a judgeship. The judicial examination was scheduled for October 1939. On September the 3rd, as Dean Post told you, he married my mother. He never got to take the judge's exam because it was also the day World War II started. And he never got to practice law in Poland. Instead, he and my mother spent 3 years in concentration camps. Their 2-year-old son, my father's parents, and 3 brothers were all killed at Treblinka. After the war, my parents went to Germany. My father taught himself English and was hired by the Americans as a lawyer to deliver legal services to displaced persons in Southwest Germany. In an act that seems to me to be breathtaking in its optimism, my parents decided to transcend the inhumanity they had experienced and have children. I was born on July the 1st, 1946, and my sister 2 years later. I think it was their way to fix their hearts and prove to themselves and the world that their spirit was not broken. My father applied to emigrate to Canada, but was refused because his legal training wasn't considered a useful skill. He was finally permitted to come to Canada as a tailor's cutter and a shepherd. When we arrived in Canada as refugees in 1950, he applied to the Law Society to become a member of the bar. He was refused because he wasn't a Canadian citizen. Because that would have taken 5 years, he became an insurance agent instead to support his family. He did well, and I never heard him complain about not being able to practice his profession. But the moment I heard the story about his being denied the ability to be a lawyer was the moment I decided to become one. I was 4. My father died a month before I graduated from law school. He never saw me get called to the bar, never met his 2 grandsons, both of whom became lawyers and are here today, and he never lived to see me revel in the life of the law. But I feel his spirit and his legacy all around me in this room. A few years ago, my mother gave me some of his papers from Germany. In those papers, I found the answer to why he always spoke so respectfully and appreciatively of Americans. I saw letters from American lawyers, prosecutors, and judges he worked with in the US zone in Stuttgart. They were warm, compassionate, and encouraging letters, either recommending, appointing, or qualifying him for various roles in the court system the Americans had set up in Germany after the war. These Americans believed in him, and as a result, they not only restored him, they gave him back his belief that justice was possible. One of the most powerful documents I've found was written by my father when he was head of the displaced persons camp in Stuttgart where we lived. It was his introduction to Eleanor Roosevelt when she came to visit our DP camp in 1948. He said, "We welcome you, Mrs. Roosevelt, as the representative of a great nation whose victorious army liberated the remnants of European Jewry from death and so highly contributed to their moral and physical rehabilitation. We shall never forget that aid rendered by the American people. We are not in a position of showing you many assets. The best we are able to produce are these few children. They alone are our fortune and our sole hope for the future. As one of those children, I am here to tell you that the gift of American justice at its best is the gift that just keeps right on giving, a gift that propelled me from the DP camp in Germany to becoming the first Jewish woman on the Supreme Court of Canada, and now to this stage. I stand proudly before I stand proudly before you, fellow graduates, believing, as did my father, that democracies and their laws represent the best possibility of justice, and that lawyers are the people who have the duty to make that justice happen, the duty to do everything humanly possible to make the world safer for our children than it was for their grandparents, so that all children, regardless of race, religion, or gender, can wear their identities with pride, in dignity, and in peace. Thank you, magnificent Yale Law School, for the great honor of letting me graduate with these brilliant and committed lawyers, and for all you have done as a law school, are doing, and will do to make these graduates our hope for the future. Thank you.
This concludes our graduation ceremony, but we will assemble again at the Sterling Law Building for a champagne reception. So we'll see you there. Congratulations to all.